Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our March 10, 2025 Sueur City Council meeting. This time, I would like to call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Council members, you were presented with your packets over the weekend. You also received electronically. Hopefully, you have an opportunity to reach out to Mr. Roby or other council members or myself with any questions. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, second. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the consent agenda. All items on consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. Mr. Ruby, you want to go over these with us and summarize what's going on?
Everyone, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. 3 items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is approval of city council minutes from the February 24th, 2025 regular meeting. The second is approval of disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 4 items over $25,000. The first is to MMPA Caravan Bond Energy for our February 2025 purchased power, totaling $557,249.34. Second, to Altitude Energy LLC, the Main Street Substation Pay Application number 7 for $52,009.86. Next, to the minutes of the Department of Revenue, our February 2025 city sales tax, $42,659. And finally, to DGR Consulting Engineers, engineering work on the North 4th Street Electrical Distribution Improvements Project, totaling $41,889.20. And finally, item C is approval of payment application number 7 for the Main Street Substation Improvements Project.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions regarding the consent agenda and the summary that you just heard? If not, I will entertain a motion to tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Schleter seconded. Any other comments, concerns, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. I don't think we have anybody here tonight for public comment. Anybody looking at this? Lindsay, thank you.
Yes.
Annette. Rogers, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you. You could have jumped up right away with your hand if you have comments.
Thank you for allowing me to stand here to speak. I would like to thank everybody. I just want to point out that people have elected you guys to work for the residents of this city, and we've had many studies on this Region 9, and it seems like nobody is listening to what we're saying. You guys are not wanting to hear anything about it. Is there a possibility that we can have a city meeting, like a town hall meeting for you guys to get more feedback from the residents in this community? If somebody can get back to me on why we don't have those kind of meetings here in the city of Sueur, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Annette. I appreciate your comments. We do have city meetings right here tonight, and this
Town hall meetings where
this is a wonderful opportunity. Everybody gets 5 minutes to speak if they want to share something with us. And I would encourage, if you have anybody who would like to share anything with the council, that would be the time to do it. But we will take this into consideration. I believe, Joe, you have her phone number? Annette's?
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the difference with coming here to the city council meeting is people don't get their questions answered. We don't get our questions answered. We can speak, but
This is our opportunity to hear you.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's,
so but a town hall, then we can, the people of this town, the residents in Sueur can ask questions and hopefully get them answered.
thank you.
So we would appreciate that.
We'll reach out to you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I think that is it with public comment, which takes us into the city administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always, just a few items to share. Staff continued discussions with the developer around the Park Elementary property and other potential housing developments in the community. We're in the process of evaluating our wastewater cost of service assessment, which is effectively a process that Mr. Transberg is leading, working with our city water wastewater engineer around the cost to provide wastewater service to our community, what that means for the future, what future rates might be, future capital plans, things like that. So it's an ongoing process, and I appreciate the team's diligence as they've worked through that assessment. We conducted a successful bid opening for the 2025 Street Utility Improvements Project last week. At the March 24th meeting, we anticipate bringing the bids forward for council consideration of acceptance and contract award. There's an MRBT meeting tomorrow at Joint Services Building. There will be no planning commission meeting this week, as there are no pertinent agenda topics Thursday night. I have the pleasure of delivering a presentation on local government to one of the LSH government classes this Wednesday. Looking forward to that. I'm sure they'll all be enthralled by the beauty and nuance of local government. Wednesday, there are a series of Vision 2050 meetings in the center hosted by Sueur County. I'll be attending a few of those. Looking forward to that. And next meeting for City Council will be Monday, March 24th. In addition to the Street Utility Improvements Project bid and contract award, we'll be looking at some information around the Police Department accreditation program. Police Large Theater will be in attendance on the 24th to talk about a new accreditation program through the state of Minnesota, or an organization in the state of Minnesota. And at this time, we're also planning for City Council to conduct a public hearing on a nuisance abatement on Windsor Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions regarding his update at all? If not, I think that'll take us into the regular agenda, starting with item 7A, which is resolution R 2025-015, the award contract for North 4th Street electric distribution project. Mr. Roby.
Mr. Mayor, for items 7A, 7B, and several of the other sevens, the Public Services Director Transberg is here to help answer any questions, should council members have any. For resolution R 2025-015, this is to accept bids and award contract for the materials related to the electric distribution improvements project along the North 4th Street corridor. This project has been planned for several years and is being planned in conjunction, both separately. It's a separate project from the 2025 Street Utility Improvements Project, but as with our previous street utility improvements project, we do like to try to run our undergrounding of electric and electric distribution projects generally simultaneously, so we're disturbing the same area only once. So for this specific project, the city, in consultation with its engineers, issued a bid package for materials for the project. There's several contract awards for various types of materials, primary and secondary power cable, single and three-phase transformers. The construction contract itself will be awarded at a future date. The total recommended package for all the low responsible bids is $530,601.70. You can certainly take any questions.
Anybody have any questions? I know this project's been planned for quite some time. I think it's great that we're doing this simultaneously with the street project. So if anybody has any questions regarding any of this, this is your opportunity.
I have a question.
Sure.
Who would use the three-phase transformers?
I'll invite Mr. Transberg for it, but primarily three-phase transformers are for our larger electric users, so not residential
Is there
users.
those users in the 4th Street improvement?
Yes, that'd be most likely the couple of industries or commercial businesses on the very north side of North Fourth Street.
So Seneca, Ag Partners,
Um,
1100 North Fourth Street, which is,
all the way down there.
yes. So those all currently have three-phase service right now and will continue to require three-phase service.
that's-
Anybody else have any questions for our city administrator or Mr. Kranberg? If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution R 2025-015 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Councilmember Schluter seconded. Any other discussion? Comments? Concerns? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 7B, which is resolution R 2025-016, awarding contract for water and wastewater state construction. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that this is one of the bid openings and contract awards that Mr. Transberg and the Public Services Division have been looking forward to for a number of years now. This is not quite the culmination of this project, but this is a major milestone in what has been a multi-year project to bring our SCADA and electrical controls for water and wastewater plants up to date. Replacement of these systems has been planned since at least 2020. Council approved plans and specs back in December of 2024. The bid package was ultimately issued, made public, bid was opened. All of the SCADA systems at our water and wastewater plant are considered at end of life or at the doorstep of end of life effectively. And this is the heart and the brains that run all of our water and wastewater systems throughout the city. Treatment plant, towers, wells, lift stations, wastewater treatment plant. The lowest responsible bidder was IPS, Integrated Process Solutions, who also notably did the work on the Well 8 and the new $1 million low tower recently for the city. And that bid total came in just under $1.5 million for the construction of this project. We'll take any questions. Anybody?
Okay, how are we gonna pay for this?
So this is, so it's currently built into the wastewater rates, and we will be coming back to city council with a bond issuance proposal.
Anybody else?
Foster, how many bids was there?
There was actually just one bid.
Was that right?
There was.
So he was the lowest and the highest.
Correct. Correct. But it's actually well under engineer's estimate.
We've worked with this company quite often. We're familiar with them. We know the work they do. And this is a quite specialized system here. So there's probably a lot of contractors out there that do this type of work. So anybody else have any questions? I know we've been preparing for this for a long time, and like Mr. Roby said, we've got some equipment that's extremely dated. This is what runs the water for our city. So with that, I will entertain any motions to adopt resolution R 2025-016 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Wynn seconded. Any other discussion? Comments? Concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I'm opposed.
We have one opposed, that would be Councilmember Smith. Thank you. Moving on to the airport building development policy updates. That's agenda item 7C. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Airport Commission considered these updates at their meeting last week, which I was unfortunately unable to attend. So the city maintains a building development policy at the airport, which is effectively a policy for what type of hangars can be built, what the standards are for those hangars when they're built out there. And occasionally it's appropriate to make updates to those based upon FAA regulations or building code. staff had recognized that there were some updates that were required in the policy itself that don't change things materially, but do define them specifically so that if anyone's interested in building a hangar, we lay out the guidelines for them right away. Specifically here, we needed to clarify that the standards we're following are Minnesota State Building Code and not the International Building Code, and also that the rear and side yard setbacks technically are a minimum of 15 feet, but if they're not using fire-rated building material, they have to be a minimum of 30 feet back. So we need to clarify that in the policy. And again, the Airport Commission did recommend to City Council that they approve the updates.
Thank you. Much like zoning issues with the city, correct? Like with the airport, yeah. Anybody have any questions for us? Oh, sorry.
Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding this subject? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the updated airport building development policy as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. Councilmember Streeter seconded. Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 7D, that'd be the airport ramp and tie down area policy updates. Mr. Roby.
Similar to the airport building development policy, this is another policy that the city maintains for the municipal airports. We do have a ramp and tie down area, which is available to anyone who flies in and needs to tie down their aircraft. They may not have a hangar, or they may be just doing some maintenance out in the sun. And so there's a space just off of the main terminal where pilots can anchor their aircraft for a period of time. The policy was last amended in 2006, and there were really no major changes that were proposed other than staff recognized that from a maintenance standpoint, in particular during the winter, it poses some risk to the city to have aircraft under the old policy anchored or moored on the tie-down area for more than 24 hours, because if we have piles of snow that accumulate around an aircraft that's in the tie-down area, that can create additional drifting challenges on the runway and the taxiways, which staff have to keep clear for obvious reasons. And so the proposed change was to amend the policy such that from November 1st through March 31st, the tie-down area would be limited to a 24-hour policy. So you could remain tied down in one location for 24 hours, but not more than 24 hours unless you give notice to the airport manager, who could then make a determination of whether it's appropriate to remain longer.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding this? Council members, please keep in mind this is coming from our airport commission. This is their recommendation. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion to approve the update of the airport ramp and tie down area policy as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion? Comments? Anybody have any concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 7E, that would be the 2025 street utility improvement project and easement agreement for 627 North 4th Street, more specifically.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the topic will be familiar to council members who considered it at the last meeting in February. As mentioned there are throughout the process of planning and building out specs for the 2025 street utility improvements project, there are some areas of right-of-way that were recognized as requiring expansion in order to accommodate the appropriate width of the project. City Council approved 2 easement agreements at its last meeting. This is the third right-of-way easement agreement that we expect to bring, third and final that we expect to bring before City Council related to this project, and it's for 627 North 4th Street, which is notable for its location at the south end of the S curve, which, looking further back in City Council discussions, council members may recall this was the S curve for which the modification of we needed to request permission from MnDOT to deviate from state aid standards to keep a 25 mile per hour S curve. So to accommodate those approved plans, which the deviation was approved by the Department of Transportation, there is a section of the private property that the city were required to obtain via permanent easement in order to build the road to standard. The easement agreement, which the language itself is consistent with the previous two, which is 328 and 400 North 4th Street that City Council approved last meeting, has been executed by the property owner and is here tonight for City Council consideration.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions regarding this matter? We're going to move ahead with this project. These are some necessary easements we need. So with that said, I will entertain a motion to approve the execution of the right-of-way easement agreement with proposed compensation as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schläger.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, thank you. Seconded. Any other discussion? Comments? Concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. And then moving on to the 2025 street utility improvement projects easement agreement with St. Anne's, Mr. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Throughout this same process of evaluating the project corridor, as we have done with all of our major street utility projects, we look not only at the existing right-of-way and the required right-of-way for these projects, but we also look at where our utilities and walkways are currently traipsing throughout the corridor, where we would maybe like to modify them, or if we don't want to modify them, where we need to make sure that we have easements. And what we found in, I think, every project that I've seen as part of my time, and I think Mr. Transberg would agree that every project he's been a part of in his time at the city of Sueur, we've discovered some utility lines that don't exist within easements. And we discovered some utility lines where the easement might deviate a little bit from where the utility actually is. And so when we have the opportunity to clean these up, we pursue that kind of cleanup for the benefit of the property owner, to make sure that they're aware of exactly where our utilities currently exist, and for the benefit of the city, so that we make sure that we have the appropriate legal permission to enter the property in the easement and maintain those utilities. In that context, for the 2025 street and utility project, St. Anne's as a parish is a unique property because they own several parcels along this corridor, and each of those parcels currently has utilities running through it. And to that end, there were 4 utility easements that the city staff have sought to enter into with the church. And when I say the church, it's the parish, it's the school and the church, because the church itself owns the school. We've been in close contact with the church and the school for the past 6 months throughout the project, giving them updates because they are going to be affected pretty materially. A lot of their entire property, all their properties lie within the improvement areas. So we've been sharing information with them and having conversations around what easements we might need to pursue. And so, as I mentioned, we have pursued 4 utility easements with affecting 4 parcels owned by St. Anne's. All of our utilities are involved in these parcels: electric, water, wastewater, and stormwater. In addition, early on, we discussed with St. Anne's and their school staff the idea of establishing a permanent trail easement where North 4th Street effectively touches their property at the far south end of the school. Currently, there is a private sidewalk that leads from the parish center on the east side of North 4th Street to the sidewalk on North 4th Street. And there's a slight gap in the Green Acres or Kingsway Trail that runs into a private sidewalk on the St. Anne's property. And so currently what happens is users of the trail, the Green Acres Trail, will either come down from the Kingsway Trail to access North 4th Street. To do so, then they have to travel on private property down the St. Anne's sidewalk, past the St. Anne's school, through the St. Anne's parking lot, and back onto North 4th Street. And as part of this project, we saw an opportunity to connect the Green Acres Trail with the proposed 4th Street Trail, effectively creating a loop that would then bypass St. Anne's private property. In order to do that and fully connect the trail, a permanent trail easement would be appropriate. And in order to keep the general public off of private property and allow them to travel on our trail system, the St. Anne's Church and School were in favor of that. So the city attorney and city engineer drafted a permanent trail easement that the church has executed that would allow for the establishment of a formal trail as part of this project that would then connect to the current Green Acres Trail. So there are 4 utility easement agreements in front of council tonight, along with 1 permanent trail easement.
Thank you. And these easements, of course, don't cost the city anything, correct?
$1 per easement.
Thank you. So we're looking at $4 for the easements, and then the trail is simply connecting one existing city trail to an existing city sidewalk, basically. How long is it roughly? 30 yards, 40 yards?
I believe it's approximately 200 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Looking at Foster for some validation, I think it's approximately 200 to 250 feet.
I think I got a picture of it in my mind, so. Thank you. With that said, I would like to ask, anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding this? Yes, sir.
Hey, Joe, we're just curious why on the previous acquisition, the one we just finished, there's a attachment of a dollar amount that was basically buying the square footage. Why is that not the same on the school properties?
So historically, for utility easements, the city has entered into those for consideration of $1. For permanent right-of-way easements, given the disruption to the property along the right-of-way, it's been the city's practice to consider a compensation for that.
That makes sense. Perfect. Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the execution of the following easement agreements as presented. I'm not going to read them all. They're all presented to you up there, Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would propose that a motion could be made to adopt or to approve the execution of all 5. If someone wishes to do each of them individually, they may. But they're all listed here so that the option is in front of council. If a motion is made to adopt all 5, the council could consider that motion. If it were to fail, then they could go through each individual easement.
With that said, I'll entertain, if anybody wants to make a motion to adopt all 5.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made to adopt the 4 easements and the trail easement also by Councilmember Sullivan. It's been seconded by Councilmember Schleter. Any other discussion? Comments? Concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grants, Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for those who follow city council meetings, or for those who were on city council in 2024, 2023, or 2022, they'll be familiar with the DNR's Outdoor Recreation Grant. The city has applied for this grant in some way, shape, or form in each of the previous 3 years, and city staff wished to apply for the grant again in 2025. Specifically, or I guess generally, to start off, City Council's 2024-2025 goals, goal number 3 explicitly relates to pursuing funding for augmentation or expansion of the city's parks and trails system. To that end, the City Council has in each of the past 3 years approved submission for outdoor recreation grants for Legion and or Mayo Parks. Feedback from the DNR in each of the previous years has been positive. It is, as you can imagine, a highly competitive grant, and we have not been awarded the past few years. I wish to apply again. I'm going to walk through each park. I'm going to skip ahead really quickly to some other notes on the summary before we get into the parks. Again, the goal is to spur significant improvements to both park spaces. Both of these park spaces are in need of something, whatever that something is. And throughout the city's history, Mayo Park has been explored as a possible campsite. Legion Park has significant capital needs. Improvements to Legion Park have previously been on the city council's capital list. And the thought with some grant funding coming in for a portion of each of these projects is that it may spur, not only can provide some funding for both of these projects in the near term, but can also spur some additional activity from the community or other grant programs in making improvements in these park spaces. Notably, in American Legion Park, the veterans organizations are actively working on improvements to the monument that's currently in American Legion Park, with a proposal to move the current monument from its current location to a new location at the south end of American Legion Park, adjacent to Ferry Street. Of note, the two resolutions that are before council tonight, 13 and 14, you'll note that these resolutions are different in formatting and language than our city resolutions typically are. That's because, as we discovered last year, the DNR is extraordinarily picky about the language that is used, and they require us to use exactly the language that they define. It's fairly generic. It does fit the needs, but it's in a different format, and that's why. Because last year we submitted it with city council resolutions as we normally would have them laid out, and the DNR came back and said, no, you need to use our language. Same spirit, same intent, but you need to use our language. Funding and construction would be planned for 2026 if these projects are awarded. One or both projects are awarded. These would not be 2025 projects. And for both of these projects, they would be made possible by a match. The majority of that match would be made through city in-kind work, which means using city staff, city equipment to make these projects possible. So with that, I'll start with Mayo Park. The Mayo Park proposed submission for 2025 is very similar to 2024. It would expand the current 4-hole disc golf course to a 9-hole disc golf course. Would create 24 campsites with electricity and water, fire pit and cooking grate. Augmented with some native plantings and a paved bituminous roadway in the park. That's able to access the ADA campsite. Total project cost for this project is estimated at a little over $317,000. The 2026 capital and cash investment from the city for this project is proposed at $20,782. It's a 50-50 match for this grant. So the total project cost, half is provided in cash from the DNR, and then the rest has to be made up by the city. A component of that, up to all of the remaining 50%, can be made up for in equipment. But if there's some additional purchases that need to be made for materials that we can't obviously provide ourselves, we would pay, and this is consistent with last year's grant application. Legion Park's proposed submission for 2025 is also consistent with the 2024 submission. Three main improvements here. One would be the addition of a concrete plaza on the west side of the current shelter. EDA compliant trail connections. So as everyone who's ever used American Legion Park knows, you can't get from the shelter to the trail without walking through the grass. And the goal of this project would be to add enough trail connections that anyone of any mobility would be able to access the main parking lot and start there and make it all the way to the far west parking lot, or vice versa, through the park. And then also the addition of a trail and skating loop. Again, this is not only an outdoor grant that has some key ADA elements to it, but it's a recreation grant. And to be competitive for these, the program wants to see augmentation of existing recreation. And to that end, the proposal would be to add a trail / skating loop. So it's an artificial skating surface. If anyone's ever skated at the Kiwanis Lights down in Mankato at Sibley Park, they put down a synthetic skating surface in the wintertime for that event, and then they pull it up, and it's a bituminous surface in the off season used for skating or walking or so. Adding some lighting to the park to make it better lit, native plantings, and benches and seating throughout the park. Total estimated project cost for Legion Park is $432,660, with an estimated city capital investment of $51,745.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. I want to stress to the council, and by no means are we voting on these improvements tonight. That is not what we're voting on. We're just voting to move ahead with the grant application. I think it'd be very short-sighted at this council to vote no on this. We just want to see what's out there for the grants. If we are awarded these grants, then we need to make some hard decisions as we move forward. That's where the big decisions are. But tonight, it's just to authorize the city administration to move ahead with this grant rating. Mr. Roby, is it possible we could get a grant for Legion and not Mayo? Or vice versa?
That's correct. We could be awarded one or the other, or both, or neither.
Okay, very good. Anybody else have any questions? If not, we will take these in two different votes. The first one is resolution R 2025-013, authorizing city staff to submit an application to Minnesota DNR outdoor recreation grant for Mayo Park.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schluter.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
Councilmember Smith opposes the grant writing application. Moving on to, that is the only vote against, by the way. So resolution R 2025-014, authorizing city staff submit application for the Minnesota DNR outdoor recreation grant for the American Legion Park.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion? Any other comments? Any other concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
Councilmember Smith opposes. With that, the motion carries with both resolutions. Thank you. Moving on to reports and items of appreciation, council members. This is your opportunity to share what's going on with your commissions, what's going on with your communities. And as always, Councilmember Huntington, we'll start with you.
Airport Commission meeting last Thursday, which at this meeting we did the resolutions where the meeting was about. So thank you for that. Tomorrow MRVT at 2:30 here in Sueur, and that's it.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Nelson.
Who's been gone.
You had a good trip.
Hasn't really done much, but I'm doing the bus meeting tomorrow. But from the minutes that I looked at, it looks like a lot of that's in St. Peter based. So it's learning time for me. So
Well, you're doing fine.
and then the other thing I'm on is the 169 thing, and I haven't seen that on any calendars. I don't know when that is.
I will notify you when I get notice.
Great. That'll work great.
It's kind of hit and miss on the notification.
Okay, so to be continued. So I don't really have anything else.
Thank you. Councilmember Schluter.
I attended a Climate Smart Municipality meeting on the 28th. As Administrator Loby mentioned, the Planning Commission meeting for this Thursday has been canceled. And the Sueur County officials meeting at the end of this month will be hosted by Lisa.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
I haven't really done much because I've been on vacation, but I would like to thank the city workers that cleared our streets off after our last blizzard. Keep my drive home very, very nice.
Thank you, yeah, we tip our hat to them. That was quite a blizzard we had last week.
I missed it.
Good for you. Councilmember Sullivan,
I have nothing left.
nothing. Councilmember Williams?
HRA meeting next Wednesday, other than that, nothing else.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report tonight, other than I want to kind of echo what Councilmember Smith mentioned. Last Wednesday was a real challenge to get around, and I appreciate all the work that city and staff did to clear the road. So with that, I will entertain a motion to dismiss this meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.